Picture this. You're a black billionaire CEO, dressed in white, standing in the midst of a lavish ballroom. Everything's supposed to be perfect, but then you hear the cruel words, "You're so well-spoken for someone like you." As you stand there, feeling the sting of disrespect, the choice before you is clear. Stay quiet or walk away from a $700 million deal. What would you do? One CEO's shocking decision left the room in disbelief and the world watching. Stay tuned to discover how his bold move became a game-changing stand against racism. Before we dive into this powerful story, imagine the courage it takes to walk away from $700 million just to protect your dignity. If you believe in standing up for what's right, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you a thing, but your one touch means the world to us, and we promise to bring you more stories that inspire and challenge the status quo. Don't miss out. Your support fuels this movement. The night was supposed to be a grand celebration, a gathering that reflected not only wealth but success, the culmination of years of hard work and ambition. The luxurious ballroom, with its soaring ceilings and elegant crystal chandeliers, was alive with chatter. Guests, dressed in tuxedos and flowing evening gowns, mingled under the warm glow of golden lighting. Champagne flutes clinked, and laughter echoed through the hall, creating an atmosphere of opulence. Yet, amidst the glitz and glamour, one person felt out of place. Standing in the midst of the high society crowd was a black billionaire CEO. His sharp white suit made him stand out against the darkly dressed crowd. But it wasn't the suit that drew attention. It was the tension in his face. His brow furrowed, and his posture was tense as he stood off to the side, clutching his phone tightly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The night was meant to be about sealing a deal, about securing his company's future and expanding it globally. He had put in years of effort to reach this point. Every move he made was calculated, every deal a step closer to his vision. But now, as he paced nervously, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. On the other end of the line, his trusted advisor was breaking the news. The CEO was stunned as he listened intently, his grip tightening on the phone. What he heard next felt like a blow to the chest. A behind-the-scenes racial incident had occurred, a subtle but deeply hurtful remark made by members of the family he had been negotiating with. This was no mere business misunderstanding. This was an affront to his character, an insult that he could not ignore. It wasn't just a business transaction anymore. It had become personal. He had invested his time, energy, and trust in these people, only to be subjected to racial disrespect. The deal worth $700 million, a deal that could have propelled his company to new heights, was now at risk, but the cost went beyond finances. His trust had been shattered. Years of building relationships and navigating the complicated dynamics of high-stakes business seemed meaningless in the face of such blatant disrespect. It wasn't about the money. It was about something much deeper, his dignity and respect as both a leader and a person. The CEO stood in the opulent ballroom, the weight of the decision pressing on him. What would be the cost of staying in this deal? Would he be forced to tolerate more racial microaggressions for the sake of his business? It was a moral dilemma, a test of his values. The glistening surroundings, once a symbol of success, now felt cold and hollow. The warm golden light from the chandeliers did nothing to ease the growing tension in his chest. In that moment, he knew something had to change. He couldn't let this moment define him, not like this. Earlier that evening, the billionaire CEO had felt a sense of optimism that was hard to ignore. The meeting leading up to the gala had gone exceptionally well, and he had high hopes for the partnership. It wasn't just about securing a financial deal. It was the culmination of years of blood, sweat, and tears he had invested in building his company from the ground up. This deal was supposed to be the breakthrough, the moment that solidified his position as a prominent business leader in an industry that had long been dominated by a select few. Everything had been going according to plan, and the stars seemed aligned. As he entered the ballroom, the atmosphere around him, though still celebratory, felt strangely different. The grand chandeliers cast a warm glow over the scene, and the laughter of guests resonated throughout the hall, but but the weight of the moment suddenly felt much heavier. Despite his impressive achievements, he couldn't escape the reality that, as a successful black entrepreneur, his accomplishments had always been met with a mix of admiration and skepticism. People saw his success, but did they truly see him? At the table where he sat with the billionaire family he had been negotiating with, there was a shift in the conversation. One of the family members, a well-dressed figure in a tuxedo, made a remark that seemed innocent at first. It was a comment that many would have dismissed as nothing more than an attempt at politeness. But the undertone was unmistakable. "You're so well-spoken for someone like you," the family member said with a smile, as if offering a compliment. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a harmless statement, but to the CEO, it was a sharp reminder of the racism he had dealt with for years. It was a microaggression veiled as praise, a comment meant to subtly diminish his worth and remind him of the boundaries that society had often placed on him because of his race. His heart sank in that instant, not because he hadn't heard such remarks before, but because, deep down, he had hoped that this time, this moment, would be different. He had hoped that his achievements would speak for themselves, that he wouldn't have to prove his worth once again. The hurt and frustration surged within him, but he kept his composure, excusing himself from the table with a forced smile. As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, he needed to clear his head. He called his team, hoping to regain some semblance of control over the situation. But what he heard next confirmed what he had already feared. The deal, the one he had worked so hard for, was no longer just about business. It had become a test of something much more important, his dignity. In that moment, everything shifted. This was no longer a corporate negotiation. It was a fight for respect. The moment he stepped outside, the weight of the situation pressed down on him like never before. He was no longer just fighting for success. He was fighting for something far more valuable, his self-respect. The deal, the money, the partnership, they all suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the deep, personal betrayal he was feeling. This wasn't just a business challenge. It was a matter of his identity, his worth, and his determination to never allow anyone to define him based on their biases. As he paced outside, the sharp bite of the cold air against his skin did little to numb the fire burning inside him. The grand ballroom, filled with laughter and luxury just moments ago, felt miles away now. He couldn't escape the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just a business deal anymore. This was about something much bigger, something deeper. It was about respect. It was about the dignity he had spent his entire career fighting for, dignity that, in one fleeting moment, had been trampled by a casual remark designed to belittle him. His mind raced with the echo of that comment. "You're so well-spoken for someone like you." It had reopened old wounds, wounds he thought had long since healed. He had always known that being a black entrepreneur meant navigating an environment where his worth would constantly be questioned, but he was tired. Tired of having to prove himself, tired of fighting for a seat at the table, and most of all, tired of accepting the subtle racism that permeated every corner of his career. But now, standing alone in the quiet of the night, the CEO realized something important. He had spent his whole life building something meaningful, something that should have been defined by his accomplishments, not his race. The $700 million deal was the culmination of that hard work. But as he stood there, the money seemed insignificant compared to what was truly at stake. His self-respect, his integrity, those were things that couldn't be bought or negotiated. No business deal, no matter how large, was worth compromising his sense of self. The decision, though gut-wrenching, was clear. He would walk away from the deal. The thought of continuing with a company that had shown him such disrespect was unbearable. He had built his empire from the ground up, and he refused to let anyone profit from his efforts under false pretenses. This moment wasn't just about rejecting a business opportunity. It was about reclaiming control over his narrative. With a deep breath, he made the call. As the words left his mouth, he felt the weight of the decision sink in. He was officially pulling the plug on the $700 million deal. His career, his future, was about to change in a way no one could predict. The CEO wasn't just a businessman anymore. He had become a symbol of defiance. In that moment, he would no longer be known simply for his success, but for his courage to stand up against injustice and refuse to compromise his principles for financial gain. As the phone call ended, he knew that his decision would reverberate far beyond the walls of the ballroom. The world would hear about it, and the message would be clear. Integrity could never be priced. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The once lively chatter and laughter that filled the air quickly began to quiet as whispers started to spread like wildfire. The wealthy family, who had been negotiating the monumental $700 million deal with the black CEO, was now learning that their carefully planned business arrangement was falling apart. It wasn't just a minor setback. It was a complete cancellation. They had never imagined that he would walk away, not from something so lucrative, not from a deal that seemed like a sure thing. To them, the deal had always been a formality, a simple transaction that they assumed would go through without a hitch. After all, they had seen people like the CEO in countless negotiations, and they were used to them being grateful for the opportunity to work with such powerful people. But they hadn't anticipated that this time, things would be different. They hadn't counted on the CEO standing up for himself, making a choice that defied the power dynamic they were so accustomed to. They hadn't expected a man they saw as an asset to have the strength to walk away from the deal on principle. As the whispers grew louder, the realization began to set in. This wasn't just about losing a business opportunity. It was about losing face. Their control over the situation, their sense of superiority, had been shattered in an instant. The patriarch of the family, a well-known figure in the business world with decades of experience, tried to save face. He was the one who had been in control of the negotiations, the one who had brokered the deal, and the one who was supposed to have the final word. He moved to downplay the situation, attempting to smooth things over and convince everyone that it wasn't a big deal, that the cancellation was just a minor hiccup. But his words fell flat. In that moment, his power, his influence, seemed almost irrelevant. The CEO's decision had already reverberated throughout the room, leaving an undeniable mark. The family's shock was palpable. Their expressions went from confusion to disbelief, and then to a quiet frustration. They were not used to being challenged, let alone publicly defied. To them, the CEO's refusal to go along with the deal wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an affront to their authority. The power dynamics had shifted in a way they had never anticipated, and they were left scrambling to maintain control of the situation. As the news continued to spread, the room became heavy with tension. The CEO's decision had turned what was supposed to be a celebratory event into a quiet storm of embarrassment for the family. There was no turning back. The deal was dead, and with it, the family's carefully constructed image of power and dominance began to crumble. The ramifications of this moment would not be forgotten easily, and their discomfort had only just begun. What they thought was a simple negotiation had become a moment of reckoning. The world was watching, and it would not be kind. The CEO's decision to cancel the $700 million deal didn't just make headlines. It reverberated far beyond the business world, igniting a conversation about power, respect, and the personal cost of integrity. His actions became a symbol of resistance, a demonstration that one person, armed with conviction and self-respect, could challenge entrenched systems of inequality and racism. What began as a business transaction was now a stand against the subtle and overt forces of dehumanization that often shape corporate spaces. It was a reminder that no deal, no matter how lucrative, could be allowed to erase one's dignity. He wasn't merely walking away from financial opportunity. He was making a statement that transcended the boardroom. In an industry where black executives are often expected to remain silent, to acquiesce to the demands of powerful, predominantly white families and companies, the CEO's decision was revolutionary. It sent a clear message to every marginalized person working tirelessly to prove their worth. You matter. His courage inspired many who had been silently enduring similar indignities, fearing that speaking out would cost them their careers or livelihoods. The CEO had shown that standing up for what's right can be more valuable than any paycheck. In the weeks that followed, his actions continued to resonate. He became an unexpected leader, a figurehead for movements within other companies that encouraged minorities to demand not only recognition for their talents, but also respect for their humanity. He had made it clear that success wasn't solely about financial gain or climbing the corporate ladder. It was about maintaining one's integrity and dignity in the face of adversity. Employees and executives alike took note. His defiance gave them the courage to stand firm in their own beliefs, to challenge the status quo, and to reject any form of discrimination, whether subtle or overt. For the CEO, this newfound role as a beacon of empowerment was both humbling and empowering. He knew that his actions had sparked something larger than himself, something that could change the corporate landscape. But for the billionaire family, the consequences were far more personal. The day they had underestimated the strength and resilience of a black CEO who refused to be silenced would haunt them for a long time. The embarrassment they had suffered wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was a stark reminder that those who wield power must never forget the value of respect and equality for all. Thank you for watching and being part of this powerful story. If you believe in the power of standing up for what's right, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We have more inspiring content coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned, stay empowered, and remember, your voice can make a difference. Take care, and see you in the next video.